I kept the bottle they meant to kill me with. And a week later, I gift-wrapped it and handed it to my daughter-in-law's parents in front of everyone, then watched the color drain from their faces at once, the exact second they realized the bottle remembered the poison they poured for me. Before we dive deeper, don't forget to subscribe and drop a comment letting us know where you're tuning in from. My name is Martin Hale. I am 72, a widower, and a grandfather. I have spent most of my life with calloused palms and a pencil tucked behind my ear. For decades framing walls, trimming doors, fitting cabinets so they closed with a whisper. Straight lines and tight joints were the way I spoke. The neighbors say I am reliable. I never aimed to be anything else. I still sleep under the roof my wife and I raised when we were barely more than kids. June chose the red for our front door, said she would always be able to find me by that color if heaven let her look down. 10 years gone, and every spring I rub that door until it shines. It is still the first thing that welcomes me home. Our boy, Aaron, grew up in these rooms. I remember those nights I pretended not to hear him sneaking out, dragging his shoes across the rug like a cat. He is decent at the core, but he is too quick to kneel to the strongest voice in the room, and that has been his flaw. He married Kendra. I tried to open my arms to her. Even so, I could feel her gaze moving over my house like a hand counting drawers. Lucy is 9. She is the tether that keeps me from drifting. She climbs into my lap without asking, squints at injustice like it is a stain that needs scrubbing, and draws my workshop with the red door open every time. I pin her pictures above the bench where my chisels rest in their labeled nests. She keeps me honest. She keeps me here. I am not given to sentiment. I label everything, I keep edges sharp, and I like the rhythm of my days. Over-extracted coffee. A quiet hour planing stock. A single pour of whiskey when the weather turns mean. Not the fancy story in a bottle kind, just something constant. I raise it to June, to the work we built, to the life that has to be finished well. Until last winter, I thought the worst my family could do was forget to call or treat me like thin glass. I thought that would be the measure of neglect for a man my age. I was wrong. Some people start tallying your possessions while your heart still beats. A few even decide to hurry the clock. Once I saw that, I did what I always do, I measured, I marked, and I prepared to make the cut. The warnings whispered. A flutter behind my ribs when I bent for a dropped screw. A brief slide under my boots, like the room had stepped 2 inches away. I said nothing. Old men do not announce every twinge. But when it happened 3 times in a week, I set the saw down and thought of June handing me water. Listen to your body, Marty. You cannot build if you will not hear it. I let the hospital take me for observation. Bleach, plastic, screens blinking out a language of numbers. I folded my hands on the blanket and tried not to feel shelved. Aaron and Kendra came that evening. He held a balloon and a carton of cookies like armor. She touched my arm with a gentleness that belonged more to onlookers than to me. So worried about you, she said, eyes on the monitor, not my face. I watched her carefully. Worried? No. She looked like a person checking a script. A card from Lucy, Aaron said. She drew your shop. With the red door. That softened me. I asked him to prop it by the window, where it would catch the last light. For a few minutes, I let myself think this was clumsy love and nothing more. Then Kendra said, smooth as glass, the arrhythmia finally showed on the electrocardiogram. At your age, that is significant. The doctor had not spoken to me yet. How did she know? I let that question sit in the back of my mind. A man my age learns which shadows are worth following. The next morning the doctor arrived, a young fellow who had not learned yet that silence is sometimes the better medicine. He told me I was stable. Medication, monitoring, a follow-up. As he flipped pages he added, almost as an aside, as I explained to your son and daughter-in-law yesterday, these episodes are not unusual. Yesterday. They had my news before I did. Later, Kendra had simply recited it to me like the owner's manual for a machine. I thanked him politely. When he left, I stared at the door and wondered what business my own family had starting the conversation without me. Hospitals hum with noise, but underneath is a hush that presses thoughts forward. I thought about my boy who once hammered nails sideways into a birdhouse and laughed like he had built a cathedral. I thought about Kendra, always arranging, always narrating. I used to call it a generational difference. Last night, when she spoke of my heart like a device she controlled, something in me went hard. I turned to Lucy's drawing, the red door, the little wreath she'd added out of season. She drew it because she knows it is mine. Not theirs. A man can be robbed of his dignity quietly, by people who begin to plan around him while he is still breathing. By noon, a nurse told me I would go home after lunch. Some of my doubt loosened. I decided I might have been uncharitable. Families worry poorly. Aaron's awkward kiss. Kendra cueing the traffic of nurses, it might all be clumsy care. I had almost convinced myself when I heard voices at my doorway. Aaron's, low and rushed, tomorrow morning, before he's discharged. She said 8. Kendra, paper thin and sharp, good. Estate sale is booked for Saturday. If we stall, we miss spring buyers. Aaron faltered. His tools. He will lose his mind if a stranger carts off his drill press. Then he should have labeled it, she snapped. Do you want to keep waiting for him to die before we can live? Lucy deserves stability. This chaos is cruel. A beat. Then Aaron, smaller, and the bottle. Sideboard, Kendra said. He will drink it the first night. He always toasts June. Tasteless if you mix it right. The blogs were clear. Their shoes squeaked away. The hallway swallowed them. My coffee cooled in my fist. No rage. Not yet. Only the clean click of the pieces finally locking into a picture no one wants to see. They were already dismantling my life. Only I could stop them. It was not just me on the line. It was June, the red door she insisted on, her grandmother's plates, the trace of her perfume that rose from the linen closet when events kicked on. Those were not lots. They were the structure of a life. And Lucy. What would I teach a 9-year-old who hates unfairness if I let myself be poisoned, priced, and parted out? She needed a grandfather who would plant his feet. Some fights choose you. Mine had arrived. I made a list. People I could count on. Roberta, my attorney, unsentimental, quick, unafraid of midnight. Henry, my neighbor, gruff, old, unwavering. The county detective Roberta trusted, quiet and methodical. My doctor's night nurse, a wizard with procedure and timestamps. Lucy, the reason any of this mattered. I refused to let Aaron drive me home into their trap. I asked the nurse to put Henry down as my ride. When Aaron and Kendra came by later, all they would find was a folded gown. Henry rolled up in his dented pickup, steam curling out of his thermos. You look like you saw something, he said. Not a ghost, I told him. A blueprint. Back at the house, I called Roberta. I told her about the hallway conversation, the bottle on my sideboard, everything. Do not drink. Do not dump, she said. Photograph, label, secure. I will get a courier and a lab today. Henry handed me an old camera and held a flashlight steady as we turned my kitchen into an evidence table. The bottle looked ordinary, foil, cork, golden label. Tilted to the light, the shrink band showed the slightest wrinkle, like it had been lifted and pressed. The cork's edge, swollen darker than it should be. I pulled on nitrile gloves from the shop. Wide shots. Seal close-ups. Newspaper in frame for the date. The nurse's patient property sticker went on the glass. I drew samples with sterile pipettes from Roberta's envelope, sealed them in tamper-evident vials, swabbed cork and neck, filled out chain of custody lines with dates and signatures. Henry shook his head. Crime scene in your own kitchen. They chose the game, I said. I will play it straight. When the courier left with the evidence, I pressed the cork back into the bottle just enough to look untouched and set it on a baking sheet like bait. Aaron called. Dad, the nurse said you went home early. Why did you not wait? We could have helped. Come for dinner tonight. We will celebrate. You can open that bottle. I have eaten, I said. Tell Lucy I love her. Dad. Goodbye, son. I took another photograph of the bottle where it sat and dialed Roberta again. Locks by dusk, she said. Medical proxy revoked. Accounts frozen. House into a trust. They will not have a lever to pull. The locksmith's van arrived before my coffee cooled. By sundown, new keys turned in every door. Roberta's clerk followed with duplicate vials and more forms. We signed until the lines felt like perfect joinery. Now we hold, Roberta said. Your footing is solid. I breathed for the first time all day, until Henry's flashlight washed over a little green sticker on the china cabinet, Lot 7. In the living room, a pink sticker on June's cedar chest, Lot 19. In the hall, another, Lot 4. Kendra's tidy handwriting on every one. Henry swore under his breath. They tagged your life like a warehouse. I set my palm on the cedar chest's smooth lid. While I lay under hospital lights, they had already walked my rooms with price tags. The phone rang again. Aaron, voice coated with concern, then slipping. Come to dinner. Kendra insists. It would hurt Mom if. Your mother is 10 years gone, I said. Silence. I will see you at dinner soon enough. Soon enough would be on my terms. Henry went home. Night settled on the house like a held breath. I lay in the dark and could not find sleep. I rose, put on my coat, and drove to the all-night grocery. I bought the darkest black tea they had and a bottle that matched the poisoned one's shape and label. Back home, I brewed the tea into something as dark as old oak, cooled it, and funneled it into the new bottle. The color was perfect under kitchen light. I pressed in the cork and smoothed the neck band. Tomorrow, this bottle would not be a trap. It would be a mirror. Morning cut pale through the curtains. Roberta called, the lab had the samples, preliminary results would be ready by the time dinner plates hit the table. The detective would be in the room. Henry dropped off a box of nails he insisted I left in his shed years ago. He nodded at the bag by the door. Your prop. They wanted whiskey to end me, I said. I will bring a bottle that ends their story. Afternoon turned thin and quiet, the kind of silence that sharpens a man. Roberta rang again to confirm, lab, investigator, chain of custody, all in line. If the report hits during the toast, she said, the detective will step forward. If not, you pour the tea, you speak plainly, and you let their faces do the rest. I dressed in a suit that still knew my shoulders. Lucy's drawing went into my inside pocket. The bottle into a fresh bag. I put my hand on the red door. June used to touch it before we left for dinner. Walk with me, I whispered, and stepped out. Kendra's parents keep a house that glows too bright in winter. Strings of lights, a rented wreath, a show meant for neighbors. I parked down the block and walked in with my small brown bag. The foyer smelled like perfume and sugar. Guests filled the rooms, neighbors, cousins, the kind you invite to admire the table. Kendra's mother swept up with a smile that had edges. Her eyes flicked to the bag. So glad you made it, Martin. I said I would. The dining room shone. At the far corner, a plain man in a plain tie sat alone, water glass in hand, watching everything and nothing. The detective. I set the bag on the sideboard. Someone asked if it was a gift. In a way, I said. Kendra crossed the room, Aaron in tow. Her smile did not reach her eyes. We were not sure you would come. I keep my commitments, I said, and took my seat where everyone would have to look past me. Plates landed. Voices rose. Lucy spotted me and wiggled her fingers. I pressed my hand to my heart. The bag on the sideboard had vanished, the bottle now stood in open view, glinting amber under the chandelier. Kendra's father tapped his glass and gave a practiced welcome. Then Aaron stood to toast to family and health, his eyes skittering toward the bottle. I rose, lifted my glass, and let my voice cut through the noise. To family, I said. Which is to say, to truth. The room quieted. I went to the sideboard, twisted the cork with that soft pop every head turns to hear, and poured. I carried the bottle around the table, filling glasses. The room smiled at the ritual. Only two faces lost their color. Drink with me, I said, setting the bottle down. To June. To family. To truth. Glasses lifted. Laughter fluttered. Neighbors sipped. Aaron's hands clenched on the tablecloth. Kendra gripped her stem and did not move. Go on, I told them, just above a whisper that's still found every ear. Drink. They did not. And in their stillness, their faces confessed. I let the silence sit. Then I raised my own glass. You did not drink whiskey. You drank tea, strong and black enough to fool the light. A ripple of confusion moved through the room. The original bottle. The one waiting on my sideboard when I came home from the hospital. I looked from Kendra to Aaron. That bottle is with the police. Swabbed, sealed, documented. My phone buzzed in my pocket. I read Roberta's message and lifted my eyes. Confirmed, I said. Poison detected. The sound around the table crumpled, gasps, forks falling, a chair scraping back. The man in the plain tie stood and showed his badge. Detective Harris, County Sheriff's Office. Everyone stay seated. Two uniformed officers stepped into the doorway with quiet certainty. Harris said, we have chain of custody evidence, certified toxicology, recordings of a hospital corridor conversation, and financial documentation of an estate sale plan before discharge. His gaze shifted to Kendra's parents. You assisted, concealed, and profited. That is complicity. Kendra's mother sprang up, stammering. We never touched. You can speak at the station, Harris said. Metal clicked. Chairs skidded. Words tumbled and died. The officers moved quickly. Kendra spat protests as the cuffs closed. Aaron sagged, gray-faced, a boy lost inside a man. Kendra's parents stared, all their holiday polish gone in an instant. Guests stared, rigid and silent. Lucy called, Grandpa. I met her eyes and gave one steady nod. It is over, I said. They led the four of them out. The chandelier creaked. A glass dripped slowly onto a linen runner. I lifted my tea and finished the toast. To June. To Lucy. To Truth. No one else raised a glass. When I got home, the porch light washed the red door in a soft glow. Inside, cedar and varnish. The stickers still clung to furniture like fingerprints. I left them for the night. Let them remind me how close I had come to being reduced to numbers on tape. I put Lucy's drawing back above the bench and sat. The tools waited, patient as always. I ran my hand across the scarred work surface and finally let the weight sit on me. They had not only tried to kill me. They had tried to erase me, erase June's laugh, Lucy's future, every careful board in this house. I stopped them. The law would grind on, Roberta with filings, the detective with reports, the court with verdicts. None of that would measure the hush in these rooms. I thought of June smoothing linens, scolding me for working late, promising that Lucy would grow up knowing what love looks like. I thought of Lucy's brave little hand lifted at that table. I did it for you both, I told the empty room. The heater murmured on. My shoulders dropped. The fight was not finished, but the house still stood. 3 days later, the house sounded different. Not that brittle quiet, something warmer. Lucy sprawled on the rug with a blanket around her legs, coloring pencils spread like sun rays. Grandpa, she asked without looking up, should the door be even redder? I studied her drawing, the house again, the red door smiling in the middle. It is exactly right, I said. She hummed, satisfied, and kept coloring. The stickers were gone. I had peeled them all, one by one, until the paper surrendered. Lot numbers replaced by the whisper of crayons and the small sounds a safe house makes. I sat in my chair and let my eyes close. For the first time since the hospital, I breathed without bracing. Lucy laughed and held up her page. See. The door is happy now. I took the drawing like it was a plan set. You are right, I said. It is. She curled into my side, warm and small. I wrapped my arm around her and listened to the house hum while the winter wind rattled outside. June's door was still red. Lucy was laughing. And I was still here. That was enough.
Hello everyone, and thank you for watching. I truly hope you enjoyed listening to the story as much as I enjoyed creating it. If you did, please consider liking the video and subscribing to the channel to help support the creation of more stories like this. Have a great day or evening.